Hello everybody, Jennifer Maker here. It's a beautiful day to make keychains. One of my favorite ways to make keychains is to engrave them, but sometimes that is easier said than done. There are so many things that can go wrong with engraving. One of the toughest parts is knowing how to position your acrylic blank or your metal blank or whatever on your machine mat. I can't tell you how many issues I've had with that over the years. But after a lot of testing, I have found a surefire way to get it right every time, and I'd love to share it with you. So let's head on over to the craft table and we'll get started. Keychains are a really fun project to make. They can be personalized with an initial or a favorite saying. You can use vinyl, paint, or even glitter to make them sparkle. And of course, they make great and inexpensive gifts. Or maybe you'd like to make them to sell. It's completely up to you. So many options here. I really love the look of the engraved keychains, right? It's truly amazing all the intricate details that you can achieve with the engraving tool on such a small piece of acrylic. The hard part, where some crafters struggle with the most, is picking the right design to engrave, making sure it's the right size, and figuring out where to place it on the mat. Well, hopefully after watching this video, you can get off the struggle bus and into the fast lane when it comes to engraving keychains. I found a great hack shared by a number of other crafters that uses a feature in Cricut Design Space you probably never even thought of using. It practically guarantees your designs end up exactly in the right spot every time. Pretty awesome. I can't wait to share it with you. So let's take a look at the materials and supplies that we'll be working with today. Not that much, right? Pretty good. So of course we need acrylic keychain blanks. The ones I'm using here measure about 2 inches, and you can find them and the rest of the supplies in my materials list below this video. We'll add our designs to these keychains and pop on a pretty tassel. Aren't they adorable? With some jewelry pliers like we have right here. You'll want a Cricut maker and the engraving tool to add your designs to the acrylic blanks. You'll also need a purple strong grip machine mat and some painter's tape or masking tape to hold your blanks in place, and some soft cloths to help clean up. And make sure to stick around to the end so I can show you something fun that I added to make these designs even more dazzling. So are you ready to get started? Let's go. Step 1. Get my free engraving files. Go to jennifermaker.com/460 and look for libraries in the red bar at the top. Then either click Get a Password if you don't yet have one, or click Enter the library. You can find the designs on the page by searching for number 460 and then click it to download the zip file. You can trace the PDFs or use the DXF or SVGs with a cutting machine. I'll show you how to use the SVGs with the Cricut Maker 3. I have 3 designs for you to choose from: a geoflare, a moonflower, and what I like to call Space Mountain after one of my favorite rides at Disney World. Upload the design that you want to use to Cricut Design Space and add it to your canvas. If you're not sure how to do this, go to jennifermaker.com/svgs to learn how to unzip and upload files. I'll show you how to prepare the pretty moonflower design, but you can use the same steps to create the whole collection or use an entirely different design. Step 2. Prepare your engraved design file. This is what my engraved design file looks like in Cricut Design Space. First, let's zoom in so we can take a look at all of the detail in this design. Click on the plus sign on the bottom left of the canvas to zoom. You'll notice that the lines look really close together and dark, and this is exactly what we want. This way, when we engrave the design, it will give it more of a filled-in look versus just an outline. With the image selected, click the field under Operation and select Engrave. This lightens the lines just a bit, but again, that's exactly what we want. Now click on Shapes in the left column and select a circle in the free section. We'll use this sort of like a template. Let's resize it to match our blank. Mine is just under 2 inches. Make sure the lock icon is closed at the top under Size before entering the dimensions. We'll resize our design to fit inside the circle in a moment, but first it's time for that hack I mentioned earlier. And just in case you don't know what a hack really is, it's just a simple shortcut, a trick or technique that makes getting from A to B a whole lot easier. In this case, it involves changing our circle from basic cut to pen under operation in the top menu. The trick here is that we won't actually use a pen. You'll see what I mean in just a bit. Now let's get our design into the circle. With the design selected and the lock icon at the top closed, use the corner of the bounding box to resize the design. Now move the design into the circle and play around with the positioning and size. You can zoom in for a closer look. Make sure everything is in the circle, including the petals. And remember, there's a tiny hole at the top of the acrylic blank to add the keychain. It doesn't really matter for this design since there's no engraving at the top, but if you're using a different design, it may matter. This circle represents the size of your keychain blank, and that's how we're using it, like a template. Once you're happy with the placement, select both your design and the circle shape and click Attach. And that's it for the canvas. Step 3, engrave the design. Now for the fun part, it's time to engrave. Make sure the right machine is selected at the top and click Make It. Now here's where that pen hack comes in really handy. Design Space adds a box around the outline of the pen layer, which shows us the dimensions of the acrylic blank we're using and the position of the design within it. We can use that to drag our design exactly where we want it on the mat and ensure the engraving ends up exactly where we want it on the blank. If this sounds confusing, let me show you what I mean by showing you what happens if we don't use the hack. So click Cancel. Now click Undo in the top menu to detach the pen circle from the design. Now hide the circle and then click Make It. We can still move the design on the mat, but now we are essentially guessing at where it will end up on the blank. That's why the pen hack is such a game changer. It shows us the outline of the acrylic blank. So let's go back and add it back in. Now drag the design back into position on the mat using the outline as your guide. The other great thing about this is that you can engrave more than one blank at a time using this method. Click on the arrow up next to Project Copies at the top and click Apply. Now there's 2 copies. Of course, you can add as many as you like. Now drag each design into position. I'll place both designs 1 inch down. I like to leave space so I have enough room to tape the blanks to the mat to hold them in place while they engrave. Now click Continue. You may notice some, if not all, of the materials are grayed out, depending on what you have in your favorites. And that's okay. Just click Browse All Materials. In the search window, type acrylic and click on acrylic 1 millimeter and then click Done. And then change your pressure to More. Also, a quick note. Since we're using the pen hack, we're not given an option to choose 2 millimeter acrylic to match our size of the blanks, which would normally be there. That's totally fine though. I switch up materials all the time depending on the project and what I find works best during testing. Every machine is different and sometimes you need to experiment with different settings to get the best results. In step 2, you will see Load Tools and Material, which shows you a pen and the engraving tool. You may be thinking to yourself, but I thought she said we weren't using a pen. Well, you're correct. We aren't using a pen. Even though it says to add a pen to clamp A, we're not going to do that. And that's perfectly fine. It won't matter at all, as you will see. We just want to make sure to add the engraving tool to clamp B. That's the important tool. Now let's add the blanks to the purple strong grip machine mat. Make sure to remove the protective cover from the acrylic disc. And it may be on both sides. You can leave the one on the back side for now, but make sure you remove the one from the front. Honestly, it's great to leave it on the back because it does protect the back of the blank from the sticky mat. Refer back to the screen to make sure your placement on the mat is right. I'll place both designs 1 inch down. Now use painter's tape or masking tape to tape down the edges of the blanks to make sure they stay put. Keep the tape close to the edges so it doesn't get in the way of the engraving tool when it's engraving the design. Before loading the mat into your machine, make sure you move your star wheels to the far right. Then add the engraving tool to clamp B. Remember, we're not putting anything in clamp A. Also, and this is super important, depending on the design you choose, one keychain can take 25 to 45 minutes to engrave. Yes, that's right. Make sure that you're prepared by ensuring you have a good internet connection and that you turn off any auto sleep or screensaver functions on your computer. These functions will stop the engraving process and you'll need to start over. Once you're ready, load your mat and press the flashing buttons to start the engraving. You'll first see the machine use the ghost pen to draw the circle, which is what we want. It's not actually drawing anything, of course, because you didn't put a pen in it. Then it will continue to the engraving process. Since engraving is a more involved process than the usual cutting, I recommend watching your machine during the cut in case any issues arise. If you look back at your Cricut Design Space screen when the engraving begins, you will see this pop up. But don't worry, that's supposed to be there. It's just letting you know that when the Engrave tool lifts and spins, that's what it's supposed to do. When your machine has finished engraving, unload the mat and use a soft cloth or a lint roller to remove the debris from your acrylic disc. This is also a good time to remove debris from your machine and your engraving tool as well. You can use a soft cloth or a can of compressed air. Remove the tape and disc from the mat. Brush off any more debris, and then remove the protective film on the other side, if it's still in place. This is what my engraved acrylic moonflower design looks like. Isn't it pretty? Step 4. Assemble your keychain. Using jewelry pliers, attach a keychain ring to the acrylic disc. Attach your choice of tassel to the lobster claw, then clasp it onto the keychain ring. Didn't these turn out great? It really is amazing how much detail you can add with the engraving tool. You can even personalize them by adding a name or maybe a special date. Now, if you want to dress up the design even more, you can add a splash of color like I did here. I created this rainbow effect using a mix of acrylic inks. If you want to give it a try, I made a video all about adding color to your engravings, both acrylic and metal. You can find the full video tutorial over at jennifermaker.com/color engraving. Now, if you have any questions at all about engraving keychains or other types of blanks with a Cricut that I didn't cover in this video, or anything else craft related that you think I can help you with, just let me know. Leave your question below this video, or better yet, come over to our awesome Cricut Crafters group at jennifermaker.com/Cricut Crafters. And that's it for today. Until tomorrow, this is Jennifer Maker reminding you to craft a life you love.